In the previous video, hopefully you've seen me take the pinch pot and join them together to make a sphere. Now you might not be working with a spherical base, you might have a slightly different shape. It might be that it was the upturned pinch pot and it's a semi-sphere and it's open at the bottom. Remember there's a vent hole in here so the air can escape. Now I've gone back to look at my design work and I've decided I want to keep these features at the top. I don't particularly like the form of this one. Whilst I like the shape of that one, I've got a spherical shape and that's the shape I'm going to work with. But I do like these additional spikes coming down. So I'm going to start experimenting with this. Now at this stage, obviously it's reasonably firm, so it's not going to collapse. I'm going to leave the air vent sat on the bottom and build on the top. You can see it's slightly flat where it's been sat previously when I've had it inverted. But that's okay because you can just modify it and work into it. Now to make the features that go on top, you need some wet clay again. You can't work with this dried out clay. And at this stage, you're just going to have to play with it like you would with plasticine, Play-Doh, other modelling clays, and develop shape. So if you wanted to create a ball, use the centre part of your hand again and roll. If you want to create something with more of a spike, if you take that roll, and then if you see what I'm doing, pressing it more at one end. You can do this on the desk. Move my drawings out of the way. Obviously, if you're working in clay, if your drawings are precious to you, we might photocopy them for you, but we accept usually on design drawings in clay, they're probably going to get a little bit dirty along the way. But if you are concerned, we will make a copy for you. So I'm starting to make some little spikes. Now, if I want to make them all a similar size, what we will do in the first instance, rather than just guess at this, is start with a piece of clay and divide it again. So I know they're roughly the same scale. You could take some scales and weigh them so they're exactly the same, but we know it's not that precise. So I'm just going to roll these and handle them the same way. So I'm going to make a group of them before I put anything onto the piece of work. So I spent a few minutes making a load of balls about the same size to make my decorative features that I'm going to put round the form. Now, if I want to space them evenly, I could apply a mathematical formula to work out the circumference of this sphere. Equally, I could take a strip of paper, as I've just done here, wrap it around and mark it. I believe that will be slightly quicker than your mathematical formula. So I'm going to cut that so it knows the right size. Now this strip I can use to measure distance. I can obviously measure with a ruler on it. I'm doing it roughly by feel. So I've divided that roughly into 6 sections. Now if I pop it around the surface again, like a measuring tape, pop it round the surface. I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to mark on all those folds. So it's about 1/6 each time. I'm not exactly holding it in the centre, but I've got those points. You can see them about the same distance around the surface. Now, if I want to create lines that run from the pole, from the South Pole to the North Pole, like lines of longitude, I can use a ruler. So I have a ruler to hand. I've got my pole point here. I'm going to take my ruler and keep it roughly straight and run it to the top. In theory, I should be able to go all the way over if I'm in line and right the way down back to the pole. So I'm going to try that again. If it's not quite right, you can work back into, you can fill that line with a little bit of wet clay and you can start again. And finally, it's easy now, you can see 2 on there already. You can do this all by eye. You don't have to be using tools, you don't have to be making measurements. It might be that your design is not particularly regular. Mine obviously is going to be quite regular. Now, I'm going to make myself a little cone-like shape. So I've rolled it at one end, I'm flattening the base out, and I've made a little cone. Now I would do the same ideally to all of these before I do anything else. Now I've decided I'm going to have a row of them at the centre point. So I'm going to look at it, and again by eye, I'm going to work out roughly where halfway is, and I'm going to join them. So I'm going to scratch the surface where I want to join. I'm going to scratch the base of the piece I'm going to add on. I'm going to take a little bit of slip, pop it on there, a little bit of slip where I want to join, pop it on there. And as I put the two together, I'm going to give it a little press. Now at the moment, I'm just going to leave that clay, the slip, as it's displaced a little bit, as I just shape and work around it. I want the little cone shape to point upwards, so you can see I'm fashioning it. I'm going to do the same with all the additional features as I add them on. Then I'm going to take a brush and I'm just going to then lightly go round and smooth in the join. I'm not going to add any more clay, I'm just going to smooth it around with a brush or small tools. Right, so hopefully you can see that I've now popped all 6 around the middle point, and I want to put another row on below and a row above. I'm going to keep them on those same lines because it fits with the design ideas I've made previously. So I've made the tentacles and I've been around with a brush, not pouring water on it and smoothing it out with the water, just a brush, just removing the excess slip. Now remember, the construction method is to build it and then refine later. If you've ever watched them building buildings in the city of Manchester, you probably see them put a frame up and then the decoration goes on at the end. So let's think along those lines. Now I want to put texture into the surface a little bit like this one on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the back end of the paintbrush. Now there's lots of tools in a pottery that you can use. I'm going to just start at the top. I'm going to put one hole at the top. It's only indenting into the surface. If you can see, I've just pressed it in a little bit into the surface and it's created a concave shape. Let me bring that closer. And I'm going to continue to do that along these lines, the lines of longitude, remember, that were running down. Now remember what I did earlier on, as I put it in, when I put the air vent in, I put it in and I twisted it. I've put 3 there and 2 there, so I'm going to try and do the same on each of these. If I need to just wiggle my additional features around, I can do, just to get them in line and spacing right. So it's still all quite wet, so I can still modify and change things. So I'm going to do that to each side. Then, using the pencil, I'm going to create a very intense close pattern. Now remember earlier on I talked about scale when I was thinking about design, and here I've changed scale, so I've gone from the end of the paintbrush pressed in mark to the tip of a pencil, and the distribution of these is slightly less regular, but it's tightly packed. Now I don't want to get fed up and suddenly just put them at random because I've started this design. You could go, well, I'll do it here, here and here, because I've got regular segments, I can do something different or leave the other ones plain. So you need to think your design through as you're developing it. Guys, it's taken forever, or felt like it anyway, and so I've done the 3 sections with the space in between, which has actually worked out quite well because it's given me somewhere to hold it when I've been doing the dots. Now remember what I always say about trying to finish things to the best of your ability and show off your skills. So at the bottom, rather than it just stopping, I've kind of done this little fade out almost into a point heading towards the centre hole. You could argue, no one's going to look at the base, miss. Well, you never know, at some point in your life somebody may examine your work in that way. If you do GCSE or A-level, a moderator might come and look at it and be checking to see how well constructed your work is. So I've now got my tentacles and I want to position them. I might want to cut them off using the knife. Let me just wipe the clay off the knife just to check the angle of where I want to put them. They're a little bit firmer now, so they're going to go on a little bit easier. I still can bend them and manipulate them if I want to, but if I handle them too much, they are beginning to crack a little bit. So I'll need to scratch and slip as I join them onto the surface. If there's anything you're doing and you want to practice it rather than put it directly onto your piece of work, obviously use a scrap of clay, try things out. It might be that you have some ideas that you want to just test out. These are called test tiles, and if you were doing GCSE or A-level, these would be really useful in your work. So I have taken the end of a pen here and I'm going to try out a technique of pressing. It's picking up all the ridges into the surface. It looks quite nice, quite a regular look. Now when you put anything in, if you're pressing in, pressing downwards, Remember, as you pull out, you create suction, you're creating a vacuum. So the easiest way to get something out is to twist and rotate it as you're pulling it out. It may still lift a little as it's coming out, especially if it's a large surface area, but think that through, give it a try. In my design, remember, I've put pieces onto the surface of the clay and displaced by pressing into the surface of clay. So there's two different techniques there. We'd like you to try both those techniques, even if you don't take them through to the final piece. And remember, we want you to be original, so I don't want to see loads of things that look like mine. You'll all be in different classes and your teachers will show you different techniques as well and different ideas for shapes, and when you're developing your design drawings, hopefully those things will come through to the final work. And here we are at the final stage. So what I've done is I've attached with scratch and slip, the technique we used to attach these pieces and join the two semi-spheres in the first place. I've attached them and they now need to sit and rest, because if I handle them I'm likely to snap them or damage them. They're quite fragile. Now, whilst tempted to fiddle with the surface of it and do any work now, the best thing I can do is wrap it up, and your teachers and the technicians in the department will support you with that and help you out. And we'll come back to it next lesson, where we'll do a little bit of refining and tidying onto the surface before it dries out to go in the kiln. Be original and have lots of fun.